Hello everyone, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody's day is going well so far. So, real quickly, just want to do a couple of things. So first off, I wanted to take a second and, hey TNT Master, welcome to the stream. So I want to take a quick second and do something that I have forgot to do for the last several streams, just because I didn't have it set up and I didn't remember to actually set it up before. And that is to give a quick thanks to all of the supporters of the channel. So these are all of the great folks over at YouTube and Patreon that have supported the channel financially. I just wanted to put this up here real quick and thank all of you guys for your support. It is greatly appreciated. I do have to figure out a way still to actually extract that list for Twitch. I don't have that in here yet, but rest assured I will probably have that figured out by next week. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly thank all the supporters here, as well as the partners who are the highest tier of support, and that is Caden Parker, Arslia, Garboli's Inc., Super Awesome, and Wencheng Gay. I could not do this with all of you guys. Of course, as you know, that has helped me reinvest back into the channel and be able to purchase better equipment for the videos and so forth. So thank you very much for that. All right. Yes, and of course, anyone who simply just watches or comments or interacts with the stream, of course, is always greatly appreciated as well. You know, I do realize that not everybody is able to support financially, and that's totally okay. You know, this is supporting financially is definitely an optional thing. If you're able to, great. If not, you know, these resources will always be free. I'm not going to ever paywall any of my content on this channel, my YouTube channel, or anything else. Everything I do here is always completely open and free. So never feel like you have to support me in that manner if you're not able to. All right. So last time we actually left off with a hot reloading code base on Windows, but we had a couple of issues. And I've gone ahead and kind of sorted out a couple of those things off camera, simply because I really didn't want to spend too much time on this. We kind of spent several videos leading up to that point, and some of it I physically could not do on stream. And that work would be all the work that I've done for Linux and macOS. Like I said, my streaming PC here, unfortunately, is only set up to stream on Windows. I do need to get that set up on my Linux install as well, but I don't have it set up. So I won't be able to fully walk through that here. That being said, I did want to take a quick moment and go through the pull request that I made for Linux and macOS support. So this I did off camera. This is one of the exceptions because I couldn't really do this stuff on camera. But actually, before I jump into this, I do want to take a quick moment here and switch over to the hot reloading branch, because I did some additional work in here as well. So we were having some issues with the debug console, and I wanted to sort of step through those changes, and then I will step through the changes that we made for Linux and macOS. There's not too much here, but it was something that I felt that I needed to go ahead and do. So what we've done is introduce the concept of an application stage. And this is basically a really lightweight, simple, what you can think of as a state machine, where the application has various stages that it's in. So we start off with an uninitialized state. That means nothing's been initialized, loaded, or anything. That's sort of the default state of the engine before we actually get things up and running. We then have a booting stage, which means that we're currently in the boot process, and that's where we call application boot. And then we have a boot complete, which means that all the boot process is is ready and the engine is ready to be initialized. Then we have an initializing stage where that initializing is taking place. We have initialized, which means that initialization is complete. Then we finally have a stage running, which basically means that we are in the main game loop, and that is where the engine is going to spend a majority of its time. So once we get here, it's just going to kind of stay here until we are actually shutting down. And the reason that we have these is because there are certain circumstances where we're going to need to query what stage the engine is actually in order to properly make sure that things are in a state to be initialized. And we'll see some examples of that here in a second. So we have that. In the application struct itself, we've gone ahead and added that stage here. And then, let's see, I'm going to skip console for a second and come back in here to engine just to kind of finish out the stage discussion here. So right before we call the game instance boot, we go ahead and flip the stage to booting. As soon as that finishes, we say it's boot complete. Then we call the initializing right here. Now, note that we do have a couple of steps in between here. We do have our post-boot initialize, which means that we're sort of doing some initialization stuff between the boot phase and initializing. So we have that. And then we have our initializing state, which is where we call our application initialize. And then, of course, we flip the state over to initialized after that. And then in our engine run, this is where our loop actually kicks off. So we go ahead and we set the stage to running. Once we have exited that loop, which is basically what this is here, we are in the shutting down. And that, of course, is where we call the game instance shutdown, systems manager shutdown, and then ultimately we flip it back to uninitialized. So this will help us in a bunch of areas. Debugging is also going to be one of those things, but we're also going to be able to query this at some point in order to be able to determine where we are within the life cycle of the application. The other small change that I made that I actually forgot to go over was here in the engine.h, we pass the game instance application pointer to engine run now, and that is because again we're kind of trying to get away from static data, and this allows us to use the game instance stage here. So that was just another small change we made there. Okay, so let's see, input, we'll skip that, we'll come back to that. I think the rest of this stuff is mostly the console changes. All right, one tiny tweak that we made here in entry H is we initialize our app instance to all zeros, right? So we just zero that out. And then, of course, here our engine run call now takes the address of app instance. So that's where that takes that pointer. Let's see. This is all debug console. All right. So I think the rest of this is actually going to be the second part of this discussion. So the reason for all of this, let's see. How much time do you spend developing Kohi on your own off stream? So this is actually going to be the exception to the norm. So this is probably a couple of hours worth of work. But unless it is something going forward that is going to either not be streamable because I don't have the platform hooked up to my streaming environment to be able to stream it like Linux or macOS work, I'm going to try and avoid doing it. The reason I went ahead and did this is just because we had kind of spent a lot of time on this and I kind of wanted to move on to something else. And so I took the liberty of going ahead and doing this, but I'm going to try and avoid doing that going forward. Okay, so that's application types. We've already gone over that. All right. So the next thing that we actually did was we needed to update our console a little bit, and that is to assign a consumer ID. So whenever we register consumer, we now return a consumer ID via the U8 pointer that we've added here. And the reason for that is because we may need to update the console consumer because we have a callback function. And the tricky thing is when you reload a library, the callback function or the function pointer's address very likely will change, almost guaranteed actually. And so we need a way to go ahead and update that. So we've added this update console consumer where we pass in that newly obtained ID. We can change the instance as well if we need to, and we can also update the callback. So all this does is simply update that, and it gives us a way to do that from anywhere within the engine. So in this case, we had to do that because our debug console is in our game library, which we hot reload. And so anytime we do that, we're going to have to update this console consumer. So the ID, really quickly, is also the index into the private array here, the consumers array. And so that's a really quick lookup for us to be able to say, okay, well, this consumer ID is this index into the consumers array. So we did that. The other thing that I did was I added just a little bit of safety here into the console write line. If we have a callback function that exists, we go ahead and call it. Otherwise, we don't. The reason I did that is because we can technically call update consumer twice. We can call it once and pass 0 here for the callback in order to sort of shut that off, and then call it again with an actual function pointer to be able to turn that back on. So with that, we're going to go ahead and check to make sure the callback exists before actually calling it. The other thing that we needed to do was we needed the ability to unregister a command. And when I wrote this system, I was originally thinking we wouldn't need it. And rather than go the update route that we have here, I thought it was just a lot easier to go ahead and just unregister the command and then re-register it. So console commands, as you recall, also use function pointers. And a good majority of those are registered by our application, which makes sense. So we need some way to unregister those console commands and be able to re-register them when we reload the library. So this just does that. All it does really is just goes through here, finds the command by name, and does a darray pop at that index. All right. And again, we're not planning on having a ton of these, so I'm not really worried too much about the performance of this. Yes, it's a string comparison. Yes, it's slow, but we're not going to have that many of them. So I'm not really all that worried about it. And hot reloading is not something we're going to be doing in shipped code anyway. So this really is kind of a null point there. All right, so that is the console C. The console H basically is just reflecting that on the header file. So that's just the same stuff there with some comments. And then we also had to make some changes to our input, because our input, specifically our key maps, also use function pointers to bind keys to specific functions. So we actually needed a way to handle that. And so one of the things that we had to do was to change the return type of keymap pop to a Boolean. Instead of throwing an error here when we don't pop, we're basically going to return the result of stack pop, right? And the reason for that is we don't necessarily want to throw an error every single time. When we unload our game library, what we're going to do is basically keep calling input keymap pop until there's nothing left to pop. And that'll leave us with an empty stack there. And then we can go ahead and repopulate that once the DLL has been reloaded. So this is to support that. And of course, the header file has been updated too to change the return type there. And the keymap is actually just has one single change. We added a keymap clear, which removes all bindings from the given keymap. So all this does is make sure this map goes through all the keys, cycles through the entries, removes them one by one, freeing the memory along the way. If you recall, this is just a linked list, so we just pop entries out of that linked list until the list is empty, and then we're done. Okay, this is, you could essentially think of this as a destroy. In fact, I might rename this to keymap destroy, because that's essentially what it does. It really just leaves us with an empty keymap. But for now, I went with clear because maybe we can maybe we can reuse it. I don't know. So that is the key map changes. And all of this, let's see, the debug console just actually has a few non-complicated changes, which I think I've already covered everything we need to cover on here. So so basically what happens here is our debug console. Within the create, now we've changed the register consumer to actually store off that consumer ID. So in the out console state, we actually have a console consumer ID. And then we register for our initial key events here. A little bit further down, when we do the lib on load, we check for a Boolean here that says, do we need to update the consumer? We'll see in the usage code here where that gets set to true or false. If we update the consumer, then that means that we need to update the console consumer with the state and the new debug console consumer write function, as well as the events, right? So we're basically re-registering for the events. And that is because when we unload the console, we unregister for those events, and we update the consumer to have null for the instance and null for the callback. So that way we don't wind up calling a function pointer that is no longer valid. Okay, so with that, we have our debug console ID that was added here. So the console consumer ID is added to the console state. And that and the function signature here are basically the only things that have changed. So that is those two. So the next thing that we did is we have these game commands, which is right now just exit and quit. And so what we need to do is have a way to remove those, because again, they are tied to function pointers that are in our game DLL. So we just added a game remove commands, and we have our game setup commands, right? So that's that. Our game keybinds, basically, I fixed an issue in here. So the game state was trying to pull from game inst error state, but now it's just using the user data that's passed through, right? So we just changed that, fixed that. We removed this toggle vsync because that is no longer needed within this file. That's been moved elsewhere. The on kvar changed, same thing. The game setup key maps, we have gone ahead and removed the kvar change event registration from here because that's been moved. This didn't really belong in the file where we're sort of making all of our key bindings, right? It didn't really make sense for the kvar change event to be there. So we've removed all that. And then in our game setup key maps, we have gone ahead and added something that says, let's go ahead and check if the console is currently visible. And if it is, we will push a new key map, right? So we're already setting up our previous key maps for our global key map and our testbed key map. But we also need to check the state of the console when we're reloading, because if the reload happens while the console is open, we need to also make sure that that map is pushed so that we have that currently. So we have that. We also have game remove key maps, which we didn't have before. Should be fairly obvious as to why. So here we're just popping all the key maps, right? So as long as this returns true, it's going to keep doing it until we run out. Then we go ahead and get the state, and we clear the console key map state. We only clear this one because that's the only key map that we actually stored off in state. Okay. And then here's the header file change for that. So let me collapse that. And then most of the bulk of the rest of the changes are actually all the rest of the changes are in testbed main. So in our initialize, we call our application register events here. In our lib unload, we call our remove commands and our remove key maps so that we unbind those things. When we load, we go ahead and we call our lib load. This was accidentally calling unload, which is wrong. So we've gone ahead and fixed that. And And then as to whether or not we actually need to update, we just say if the game stage is greater than or equal to boot complete, right? And so that'll tell us when we're loading up the library, whether or not we've booted up and whether or not we actually need to update the mappings. So basically the first time that we load the library, that's not going to be true, but every time after that, this will be true. So if the game stage is beyond the boot complete, then we go ahead and also set up the game commands and key maps. We can't do it before the boot is complete because none of those systems are set up. We have our toggle vsync moved here, and our game on kvar changed, moved here as well. And then we also have our register events has been updated to look at the application stage. So we have our boot complete. If we're in boot complete, then we go ahead and register for the debug events, as well as the key pressed and released, as well as the kvar changed. All right. Last but not least, we have our application unregistered event, which is basically unregisters our kvar changed. Okay. And that is all of the changes that we made to fix the debug console. So ordinarily I would want to do this on stream, but I felt like we sort of spent enough time going through that live. I kind of wanted to just get it done. So this is already checked into the feature hot reloading. Okay. All right. So what we have here is a pull request to add Linux macOS support. And as such, I'm not going to go into great line-by-line detail on all of this. I'm going to kind of skim over it. And that's the reason I did a pull request. So this particular pull request is going into the feature hot reloading branch from a hot reloading Linux branch that I made. And so basically, this is a diff between all the changes that we made last stream, which are not yet in main, and the platform-specific stuff that I could not do on stream. All right. Before I jump into this, I do want to just remind all the viewers of the stream that this is an interactive stream. So if you guys have any questions or comments, anything like that, feel free to jump into the chat and ask, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. All right. So the first thing that we have here is a shell script. And so all this does is basically the equivalent of what we did on Windows, where we stripped out or just took out the testbed lib portion of our build all script. So this is exactly the same as that, just for our Unix-like platforms. So we have that. And then I went into platform, and I actually added another error code to our platform error codes. And that is file exists. And I added that because, technically speaking, when we are copying a file, it is possible to say we don't want to overwrite the file if it exists. And so if so, we would throw that error. In addition to our platform dynamic library extension, I also needed to add a platform dynamic library prefix. And on Linux and Mac, that's going to be lib. And then Linux is a little bit different from Mac in that it requires a / in order to actually find that. So we did need this to be split up per platform. Now on Windows, that's actually just going to be an empty string that gets returned there. So we'll take a look at that when we get to it. Here is the platform Linux code. So this is almost exactly the same on a high level as the Windows code. It's just we have all the Linux specific file system stuff in here. So we have our file watch object, which is just an ID, a file path, and a last write time, right? So we have that. We have our list of watches. We have, looks like this is just a formatting thing. Then we have a platform update watches that's hooked into our platform pump messages, just like we did on Windows. We have our, let's see, our get handle info. What changed about that? That might have been like formatting or something, maybe white space. Oh, it moved this. Okay, that's fine. So for our dynamic library extension on Linux, it's .so. For our prefix on Linux, it's /lib. So this gets prepended to the front of the file. This gets appended to the end of the file. Our platform copy file is the most complex on Linux because there's not a simple copy file A that we can call like Win32. We actually have to use a couple of different things here. So the first thing that we do is we go ahead and open a file descriptor for that given file. We then stat the file to obtain its attributes like the file size, which is here. We then open a file descriptor for the destination. And we then essentially loop through. And as long as we are actually copying something, we are going to use the send file API. Now, this is one way of doing it. You could also fread and fwrite if you wanted to. I chose not to do that because send file actually uses kernel level calls and it's much faster. So if you don't have send file support, this may be an issue, but I think for right now, it's probably safe to say that most people are going to have that. And so this has just got a bunch of error checking code within that to make sure that we are copying in increments that are supported. This has to be looped through because for large files, Linux actually has a file system limit on how much data can actually be copied at once. So we copy the data of the file first. We copy the times, so the last access time, the last modified time, we copy those over from the source file. And then we copy file permissions here. And then something that you may or may not have noticed if you are a experienced C or C++ programmer, you're probably wondering why the hell I'm using gotos. So a lot of places and books will tell you that goto is an evil thing in C and C++. And 99% of the time they're correct, but there is a use case for it. So for those of you who don't know, goto basically allows you to define and label somewhere that looks something like this. So we have just an identifier here with a colon after it. And goto allows you to jump from anywhere in code directly to that spot. Now, the issue with this is that can make it really hard to follow. But the reason I chose to do this is because we are opening file descriptors. We are opening one here and one here. And basically, if those are not -1, they're a positive non-zero number, then we know that we have a file descriptor open. Those remain open until we actually close them. So if at any point we actually fail in this operation and return some sort of error code, I don't want to have to rewrite this logic to check the source and destination to say, hey, is this open? If so, close it. Double check the close result. Like, I don't want to have to write this over and over again, right? And if I didn't use these goto here, I would have to do that. But this is one exception to that rule, where you can use goto and jump directly to another spot in code, which, if you see here, does these things and then eventually returns our ret code. So our ret code up here is defaulted to success, and we set it to an error otherwise here, right? So this first one, we don't have anything up necessarily open because we failed here. So we could just return here. But from then on, we have at least one handle open. So from there on, we say, okay, ret code is this, and then go to close handles. Ret code is this, go to close handles. And that same pattern is followed. So it's 2 lines of code instead of, 12, right? So this is definitely one place where a goto is not absolutely evil, and I would argue it's actually a better thing to implement. You just have to be careful with it, because you can technically call goto close handles from down here or anywhere within this file and jump to it, which can get really messy, right? I'm just doing it within the context of this function, so you just have to be careful with that. All right, so that is the copy file. Now, macOS actually has a much neater version of this, so I'm only doing this on Linux, right? We have our register watch, which is functionally exactly the same as our Windows version. The only difference is we are, instead of instead of using our, what was it, find first file and get file time, I think it was, instead of doing that, we are statting the file, and we are using that to obtain the last modified time, right? Otherwise, this is functionally the same, okay? So we're just using basically the Linux types in here, right? The array create Linux file watch, for example. Now, you're going to notice that the macOS version of this structure looks almost exactly the same, but I declared it separately just because there is the possibility that maybe we update this and it needs different types of data. So I've gone ahead and separated that out, but this looks almost exactly like it does in macOS as well. So we have unregister watch, which is again the same as the other platforms. The only difference is the types of data that we're using in here, so I'm not really going to go into that. Platform watch file, none watch file, just calls register watch and unregister watch for now. Platform update watches, again, is mostly functionally the same. The only real difference here is we're looping through the watches, and then any of these that don't have an invalid ID, we go ahead and stat the file. We check that the file actually exists, right? So if the stat fails, then that means the file was removed or deleted. And in this case, we want to trigger a file deleted. We do the same thing in Windows, right? So we just do that. And then otherwise, we warn that some other error occurred on the file watch, but we're not going to boot out of that just yet, right? I have it to do here to handle this error if we ever actually wind up hitting this like repeatedly. I have something in here to come back and do that, but I don't know if I'll ever need to. The real meat and potatoes of it here is the info that we pull from stat. We check that and we check it against the last write time. And if there is not a zero difference, then we say, okay, we've found an update, update the last write time, and then send off the event code watched file written message with that context. Okay, so it's exactly the same as the other platforms. We are just using the Linux types. Okay, so that's actually the longest and most complicated part of this whole thing. Let me minimize some of these. Okay, here's the macOS version. So this is, again, almost exactly the same as the Linux version. There's just a few type differences here. So we have our macOS file watch again. Our last write time is long in this case. We have our watches array. Our update watches is in our platform pump messages all the way at the bottom, right before we're returning our quit flagged. Our library extension is .dylib, and our prefix is just lib without the /. Platform copy file, macOS actually has a copy file function that is in copy file H, which is this guy here, that automatically handles copying over all the permissions and all that stuff. And so in this case, we do flags right here. So we do copy file all, which handles all that stuff automatically for us. If we are choosing to overwrite if exists, we're going to basically set the flag or equals to overwrite if exists, right? And then from here, we say if the result is not equal to 0, then we've got some sort of error, right? And we'll check it against enoent, which means that the file was not found. If the file already exists, and we're getting this error code, then that means that we said we set the flag to not allow overwriting if the file exists, and then we return platform error exists, otherwise we return unknown. If we don't have an error at all, we return success. Register watch is exactly the same as the Linux version. It's just using the macOS file watch type. Unregister watch, same thing, just same exact logic, just different types, right? We probably could have maybe combined these two, and I might at some point, but for right now, I'd prefer to keep them separate. Update watches, again, does the exact same thing as the Linux version, so I'm not going to go into it, right? So the Mac version of this was actually pretty straightforward. Platform Nix received a few updates as well, so we added the logger to that. I did remove this code here to determine whether Linux or Apple, because we actually have this platform dynamic library extension and prefix. We have those, I might as well use them. And then what we did here is we basically are formatting a string with the prefix, name, and extension. And then, whoops, looks like I left a comment in here, but I guess that's kind of an example of it, so I guess I'll leave it. So we try and load our library here. If for some reason we don't load that, I'm actually throwing an error now in the console with the DL error that was thrown. So this actually gives us a nice string formatted error that can be plopped right into our error message and used. So I went ahead and added that in there. A little bit further down, right after we get rid of, I should say within our dynamic library unload, once we unassign or unload the library, we set the internal data to 0 just to make it a little bit more obvious what happened there. And then I've removed this dynamic library extension. Wow. I have my window open and it sounds like some cars just went racing down the street. That's awesome. Instead of having this platform dynamic library extension here and doing this type checking, I've just split these out into the files as we saw before. So that is that. Small change to Win32, just to move this prefix there. Again, it just returns an empty string, so we just added that there. And then in entry C, we went ahead and changed our hard-coded DLLs and whatnot to use our multi-platform code, right? So one thing we're also doing is we are doing a 100 millisecond sleep before trying to copy the file after unloading the file. And this is within watched file updated. This was an issue specifically for me on Linux. It did not happen to me on Windows or either on Windows or macOS, but for some reason it was happening to me on Windows. I'm not super happy with this fix. I'd much rather find a better way to do it, but for right now, this is what I'm rolling with. So here we just get the prefix extension, and then we use string format to format the source and target file, just passing a name here, right, with the extension and prefix on there. And then we use the platform copy file, source target file, source and target files, right? So we've done that. Looks like I have a comment here that for some reason, I guess I found and replaced, updated it. I probably ought to remove that. Whatever. And then next, we have a little bit further down here within our create application. So this is the initial load. Instead of, again, hard coding this, we go ahead and perform the copy file here, just using our string construction methods. And then down here, we did not have the prefix for the initial load of the testbed lib. So we've gone ahead and added that prefix there. The other thing is, if the platform watch file fails for the game library, we go ahead and print out a error message for that. So that is entry C. And then there was a small, really annoying thing that actually tripped me up for quite a while, where I actually had to rename this create module to create shader module, because when I was debugging on Linux, it was mixing up the symbols between this function, which is now in a dynamically loaded library, and a libc function for creating a module, which happened to also be called lowercase create underscore module. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on there, but renaming the function fixed that bug. So this is what that's all about. I also deleted 2 files, which should have been deleted. They were useless, just left over from the old way of doing things. The shader utils C and H files. All those included was just this create shader module, which we already have in our backend. So we don't need those. So that is the list of changes for our hot reloading on Linux and macOS. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we'll go ahead and come back here, and we will squash and merge it, right? We're just going into the, remember, we're going into the feature hot reloading branch, right? So we'll squash and merge that. And we can delete the hot reloading Linux branch. We can get rid of that, right? And now we'll go back to pull requests and feature hot reloading. Had recent pushes less than a minute ago. We're going to compare that. And now we're going to load all this stuff into main. So, whoops, crap. Wrong button. So we have 4 commits here. We see our work in progress hot reloading that we did initially. Hot reloading working, needed to fix debug console, and then our merge that we just did here. So this includes all of that stuff that we have actually done over the last several streams for hot reloading. Okay, so I'll go ahead and create this one. And we can squash and merge it. And I'm just going to leave all of this here. And merge. And I'll go ahead and delete the branch. All right. And so now we are all up to date, and the repo is up to date. You guys should have all the latest, greatest code. So I'm going to switch to the main branch. Probably typed my password wrong. Yep, of course. All right, clear that. And I'm going to clean and rebuild. Take a second. Okay. So now I'll go ahead and run this. And drag this down here. Shrink this window a little bit so we can just kind of see what we're doing. I'm going to press T here to make this guy a little bit easier to see. And I'll just sort of adjust the camera a little bit so our cube is kind of off out of the way here to the side. And I'm also going to open up the console, right? So this is kind of our shakiest test case here, right? So I will go ahead and split this console, and I will run the build testbed lib.bat. And when I do this, it should trigger the auto hot reloading. If I don't have a breakpoint, that is. All right. And if we scroll up through this, we actually see hot reloading game library. And it looks like all of our stuff works. So just to prove further that this is working, let's go to testbed main. We'll go to updates, and we'll just use our rotation like we did last time. So we'll just change that to negative to make this guy spin backwards. And we'll save that, build again, and we see here that we're now spinning backwards the other way. So our hot reloading is working. And we can also type into the console and so forth. Now, there is another thing that I am going to choose to fix on camera or on stream, and that is all of this crap, right? All of this, all these warnings, right? All these memory tag unknowns. I want to fix a lot of those things. This one is to be expected. Also, this dynamic allocator free aligned trying to release block, that really doesn't need to be an error. At worst, we could have that as a warning. So I think that is in the dynamic allocator itself. And that is right here. So let's see. So this first case here is an actual error. because that doesn't have a pointer. So that's an actual error. Releasing something outside the allocator range is not really an error. It's not going to stop the application from running correctly. So I'm going to change that to a warning. Let's see. This is a hard error. So okay. That'll at least turn those to warnings instead of errors. And then kallocate aligned called using memory tag unknown. So let's go to kmemory, and we'll say kallocate aligned. And that is right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a breakpoint. And every time we hit this, we are going to resolve that line of code. Right? We don't have that instance open. Okay. So we'll run. And here we go. So we'll just follow the stack trace back up. So input keymap push. So that's right here. Okay. So our keymap binding add is doing it. So we're using a memory tag unknown here. So we really probably ought to, let's go ahead and give that its own thing. So we'll come down here to the bottom, memory tag keymap. You know what? I'm just going to say keymap. That should be specific enough. So we have that. We also are going to have to go to kmemory.c and update our array here, right? And so we're just tacking this onto the end. So we'll just say keymap, space that out. System font, was that really the last thing on that list? That seems, yeah, it was. Okay. I was wondering if I missed updates there, but I didn't. Okay, so that is one of them that we need. So that is in keymap C, memory tag keymap, which means there's probably another unknown right here and the k free. Now we can free that keymap there. So let's go ahead and build again and find the next one. Let's see, Mighty, first time chat, so welcome to the stream. Do you think there's much of a disadvantage to using DLLs for games? I remember reading there's some overhead in between calling them. Is it worth like building all of your modules together statically for a retail build? Not that I've ever seen. I mean, it's certainly something that we could look into and try to profile at some point, but I can't imagine it would be anything that would be like breaking, right? Like, I can't imagine that overhead, whatever there may be, which I don't think is anything more than just function pointers themselves. I can't imagine that is going to be what our bottleneck is going to be, right? Like there's going to be so many other things that we're going to want to speed up that are going to be hitting our performance much harder than that. So I can't imagine that's ever going to be something that's bad enough that we'll have to address it. If it is, we will address it. So just because we are sort of doing this hot reloading now, doesn't mean we have to do that in a retail build. We could set up our libraries in such a way where we hard link them for one type of build and we don't for another type of build. And that's sort of the advantage to doing it this way, right? So I hope that kind of makes sense. Okay, so we've built, run. Do you have features like link time optimization turned on? I don't remember if it is by default. I haven't actually turned on many optimizations at all. I'm sort of just using the defaults right now. When we actually go to, so one thing that we're not doing yet is we're not building release builds yet. So when we go to actually look at release builds, we're going to start tweaking those optimization flags then and start looking into those. But for right now, we're not actually doing any of that because we're still exporting all the debug symbols and stuff like that. So doing any of that stuff is probably not really going to help us on a debug build anyway. Okay. Shader system create. Oh, interesting. So our shader system is actually creating one as well. Memory tag unknown for our hash table block. I thought we had. We don't have a hash table? Really? Okay. I guess we will create one for it. Do I want to do that or just like a generic container one? Nah, I'll go ahead and create it. It's fine. Memory tag hash table. And I'll copy this over to, whoops, not key map. Let's see. kmemory.c. And we'll add that right here to the end. Oops. And then we will go back to, where was that? Right here. Let's see. So this hash table block, I think, is part of the initial allocation. Wait, why? Why are we treating this separately? That might have been the reason I didn't do it, actually. Element size, element count. This is always going to be the same thing. I guess I really didn't need that after all. I probably should have just allocated it with... screw it. I'll leave it for now. All right, let's see what's causing the next one. So I like to go through every once in a while and just sort of clean up all of our warnings. Oh, wow, we didn't have any. We got rid of them all. Sweet. Okay, that was actually a lot quicker than I was thinking it would be. All right, so we have a validation performance warning here. Yeah, I'm not really going to worry about that right now because those shaders are going to be changing anyway. Do you have any other warnings I can get rid of? Yes, a bunch of these guys. That one makes sense. The kallocate aligned called before the memory system is initialized. I feel like we can do away with that one too. That's going to be in kmemory.c as well. Called before system is initialized. Where is right here? So if we don't have the state pointer, and I'm willing to bet that this is probably all of our dynamic loading that's doing this. So let me just set a breakpoint and see what's actually causing this. That's the string duplicate stuff, which is our dynamic library load. So the correct way to fix this would probably be to move this stuff later in the application. We should probably get rid of all of these. So if we were to do this, let's see, load game lib. That's the update. Here's the create application. So we create the application. Which I guess this probably technically could move to here. The only thing that's going to have to change is our check to see that those function pointers have been stood up, because I'm pretty sure that's actually going to cause it to fail. But I'll move this to here for now, at least to get rid of some of those, and this just needs to be app instead of out application. So that'll take care of some of that. Let me get rid of this comment. That's dead. So create application. Ensure the function pointers exist. So this would fail if we leave it here. But it won't fail if we do it. Oh, I don't think we can do that though. Because I think the engine create needs some of this stuff, like the boot. Yeah, it needs the boot. Okay, so you know what? I'm not going to sweat it then. I'm going to go back to, let me kill this. I'm going to undo this. Move this back up here. Still do want to delete this though. So I guess I could really just get rid of that warning. Let me see. So I'm just trying to think if I should put something in here to turn that on or off. I suppose. Yeah, I think I'm just going to turn it into a trace. Which, if we turn off trace logging, will just make it shut up. And I think that's fine. We're not release. So those will be off, or those will be on rather. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'll just I'll demote it to a trace and say that. Oh, ads. Okay. I will be right back. All right. Okay. So I think I've gone ahead and demoted that to a trace. Let's just see here. Let's have a look at the logs. Okay. I'm fine with that the way it is. All right. So one other thing that I wanted to do, and I'm not sure what I want to do first or whatnot. I do want to take a look at maybe starting to unload some meshes or objects and see if that works, because right now we're just sort of loading this stuff up and we have no way to unload it, which is going to be the precursor to the next thing we need to implement, which is going to be scenes. So in order to handle that, we're going to need to have some way to actually unload some of these objects, right? So that is one thing we can have a look at. There are also a number of issues that have been reported, some of these by me. And so I'm wondering if I should kind of step through some of these things. Just to sort of get some of these things out of the way, because some of these have been kind of long-standing. Some of these are going to be complicated, and some of these are not going to be easy to fix right now, so I'm not going to get through probably even half of this list, but maybe we can knock a few out so that you guys can see a sort of debugging or troubleshooting state of mind, I guess. So I guess I'll just step into a couple of these things. Pushing the apostrophe key makes the app crash on Windows. Really? All right, so here's the engine. I'll be dipped. It does. What is it trying to look at? Lawrence, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. So, wow, this binding. What binding? Key apostrophe 222. Oh. Okay, yeah. I think that's because isn't 222 the maximum key? I think it is. Let's look at our keys. It is. Well, I thought the apostrophe was in here though. Key quote was key apostrophe. So that's 222. Oh, okay. I didn't catch that because. Wait, then why does it say? Oh, that's interesting. So because these aren't sorted, it didn't catch. Okay. So key apostrophe, which is the same as key quote, right, is 0xDE, which is 222. However, since the one that comes before keys max keys is only 221, this also becomes 222. Oopsie. All right, I guess we'll say we'll just hard code that, right, to just 255. I don't know if I like it, but it should fix the bug. I should probably sort these at some point. All right, and now we should be able to hit the apostrophe key, and we're good to go. So actually in the console, oh, I don't think that's actually registered to type in the console, so that's not going to work. That's fine. All right. So that one is going to be considered fixed. So that is good. I guess I should probably make separate commits for these. So git status. So I'll say fixed various console warnings also resolves, what number was this? Number 131. Number 131. Right, and then git push okay, so that's been pushed. Right. Okay, so that's been fixed. Let's take a look at the others. So incidentally, I guess one thing I probably should have prepended this with is if you guys do find something wrong with the engine, this is probably the best way to report it to me, is by writing up a bug on here. So you can literally just go to new issue, bug report, right? And it gives you sort of a template here to fill out. This way I will actually be able to see it, and it'll help you sort of prompt you, give me enough information to be able to troubleshoot it. And so if you guys do find something that you need fixed, report it here, and I'll try to keep on top of this better as we move forward. Yeah. So let's see. Bug mesh loader binary read write is rewriting vertex 3Ds. Yes. Okay. So this one was actually reported to me, I think, in a YouTube comment. No, it's reported by KA in Discord. So our KSMs, which is our Kohi static meshes, the write and load are basically using the wrong type for the center and min extents and max extents. So if we go to, let me actually just copy this and find it this way. So if we take a look at this guy, which is in our mesh loader, what he is talking about is when we come down here to, let me find it, to right here, where we're writing the extents, which is ultimately used for like the bounding box and viewport occlusion, things like that. These are writing out as vertex 3Ds, which is bad because vertex 3D has position, normal, texture coordinate, color, and tangent, right? Now we're lucking out that this actually works at all because the first bit of this is a vector 3, and that's probably being cast away somewhere. And it's the position, right? So it does technically line up, but the problem is it's reserving a whole lot more space here than what we actually need. And when he reported this, I kind of looked at it ahead of time and said, well, I think the fix is going to be this here. And so this would be a good opportunity to increment the version number and backwards compatibility check. And so the issue with this is if we were to just change this, which actually for the, let's see, for the write, we actually can just change it. So we can say vec3, right? And when we write this out, it'll write as a vector 3, right? Because that's all these are supposed to be. So this will actually fix that. We also need to change the version here, right? So we're going to increment that by 1. So this is fine. That part of the fix is fine. The issue is going to be when we load the file. And so that is going to be up here for load KSM, right? So for right now, we are basically reading the version, but we're not doing anything with it. And then when we come down here, we are doing a file system read call using the vertex 3D. Now, if we changed the size, then that would mean we're only reading the size of a vector 3, but for the older version of the file, it would have written this much data, which is going to be a problem. That's going to cause the load to fail. It's going to cause our data to be invalid, and that's a bad thing. We definitely don't want that. So the way that we're going to handle this, and this is a good example of why we version our files, is we're going to write some backwards compatibility in. We could just say, you know what, the user is kind of screwed. They should just regenerate the KSM file and be done with it, right? And maybe that's what we'll do when we go to like release a full version of this, or like an actual release build of this. But for the sake of an example here, right, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to wind up fixing when you have proprietary formats, right? Or you'll add fields or whatever. And so what we should really do is a version check here. And the version check will surround that and basically set an extent size. So I'm actually just going to copy this, right? Because I already kind of figured out what I have to do here. So I'll put that right here, okay? And we actually explicitly mentioned this issue here. So we'll take the extent size and we're going to say, we're going to assume that the size of the extents here is a vector 3. However, if we load the file in and take a look at the version number and we see that it's version 1, then we're going to say, well, no, we actually need to treat it as this because that's how it was written when the file was created. That's how we need to read it in. So we can then take this extent size and replace these size ofs here. And this will actually give us what we need to be able to read the file in properly. So let's go ahead and build that. Okay. And since this is a version 1 file, we are actually going to wind up hitting that code. In fact, let me set a breakpoint here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press L to load. And we see here that our version is 1, and our extent size here is going to be set to 60 instead of 12. Okay, and then we'll read these things in as normal. All right. So what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and escape out of this and go here to our assets. Oh, I see something else I need to resolve too. I'll go here to our assets and let's see our models, and we have our Sponza OBJ and our Sponza KSM. Here it is. We're just going to open this. I suppose I could do it as a hex editor. Let's try that. Does this actually give me anything? Yeah, okay. So here we see our version number, right? So that's 01 to tell us what that is. So I am going to delete Sponza KSM, which is going to cause us to regenerate that. Let's see. Close editor. So that is going to cause us to regenerate the file. So we're going to load again. And I'm going to press load here. And here we're doing all the deep duplication stuff you guys probably haven't seen in quite a while. It does take a minute because that's kind of a complicated file. And my dedupe code isn't exactly fast. All right. So we've loaded this up. And now, if we go ahead to assets and we take a look at this new KSM file, we're going to open anyways as a hex editor. Now we see we have a 2 for the version number. So now we should be able to come into our here. And I'm going to, I guess I'll just do this. And we'll just breakpoint each one, right? So here is the window. I'm going to press load. So the very first file that we're loading is got a version of 2. So it's going to use this. And just to illustrate this, the KSM file Let's see, do we actually have the file name here anywhere? I forget. See the name. I mean, Sponza, right? That's one of our Sponza objects. So we'll go ahead and continue with that correct size. And we see here that it's all loaded up, right? So that fixes that bug. So let's go back to this. And oh, TME, thank you so much for the Prime. I really appreciate the support on that. Thank you so much. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll grab 130 here, and we'll say get status. We have updated these things. What did we update on input? Did I accidentally? Yeah, I accidentally deleted a comment there. That's why I always do get status first. So we updated our KSM, which, yeah, that's not even going to open anyways. That's fine. And our mesh loader, which really is just this guy, right? So get add get commit resolves 130. And I'll push that. Get rid of this other console over here. All right, and now we see that this is closed. So this is fixed as well. So that is that. We have a couple of other things here, but I saw something else that drew my attention that we really need to fix. And this is really a Windows specific issue, but look at all of these PDBs. My goodness. These are all the builds that we've done, and particularly where we're doing like the hot reload builds, we generated a lot of PDBs. So we need to actually set something up in our build process to get rid of those, because that's rubbish. So we're only going to have to address this in the batch file, actually. So we'll come down here to, I guess I'll do it in the build all script. And I think I can literally just, let's see, make F. What is the, I can't remember the syntax of the del command because I'm so used to Linux these days. Isn't there del help? Because it does not exist. I don't remember what the syntax of the del command is for. I think you could just pass it wildcard files. We'll go ahead and do it here. So we'll say del star dash pdb. Actually, that's going to have to be bin, I think, right? So this is all in the bin. Yeah. So bin / because Windows. Okay. Let's see if that does it. So build all. And that did it. Cool. So every time we build all, we'll go ahead and delete those. And again, that's an artifact of Microsoft's debugger, requiring us to have to generate a unique one of those every single time. Super annoying, but what are you going to do? All right. So there's that. I guess I'll commit that on its own since it's not part of a bug fix we're doing. PDB cleanup on Windows. Okay. All right. So next, let's take a look at another bug. Gigabytes and so on typed as int by compiler. Oh, I think I know what this is going to be. If I try to allocate 4 gigabytes in our memory system, it overflows. Ooh, yeah, that actually does make sense. This variable should at least reach 4 gigabytes. U32. But because it's an int, it doesn't. Because int is the default type of numbers, or default type of anything really in C. So, that's going to be, that defines where I put those? Yeah. Let me see. What is the I think I can just type U, or is it ULL? Yeah, I think it's ULL. I think is what I need it to be. I wonder if I do. I guess I'll do it for all of them, just to be safe. I think one of them should be sufficient to like upcast the whole thing, but okay. Memory system config. Yeah, so that's, let's just look that up. So right now we're doing gigabytes 1. Let's change that to a 4. And we'll see what we get. Yeah, it looks like it did the thing. Right, let me actually open Task Manager. And let's find, give me just a second here to find the process. Does it annoyingly start under Visual Studio? No, it doesn't. Okay. So I will take a screenshot of this. So you guys can see, because I don't necessarily want to bring my whole task manager up, but what we have here is our test bed, and we actually have 4.7 gigabytes actually allocated here, and that's because we have other things that are outside of that memory arena. So that seems to have resolved that. Let me try something a little bit bigger than 4 gigs. Let's try 8, right? And my system here has enough to be able to handle that, so because I seem to recall something over 4 gigs would mess something up. I seem to remember putting a to-do in there. I just want to see if this works. Let's see. It appears to have worked. Yep. So we have that here. In fact, I think if I do M here, yeah, we can see right there. We have 8 gigabytes, right? So that works. I'm not going to check this in though. Let me put that back down to like, I'll put it to 2. And this is number 127. So commit this. $127. All right. Now that's closed. So yeah, that's the next one. Cool. All right. And like I said, like I've said, you know, I just want to reiterate, this is a interactive stream. So if you guys have any questions or you notice something along the way, you know, feel free to go ahead and flag that down, right? So, let's see. Parameters of get aligned range it defines do not have types. This one was reported by this user. I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't speak Russian, so I'm not even going to try. It defines H, the parameters of the function get aligned range do not have types and are defaulting to int. These should be changed to U64s. Really? I don't remember this. So, yep, sure enough. So get aligned up here has types. This does not. But these, because C allows you to sort of default to int, which is kind of a weird thing. And I never like to take advantage of that, so I'm not sure how I missed this, but these should be U64. And that would have been a big deal if we actually ran into anything that required that. So let's see, the range. That's already using U64, so that should be good. Let's go ahead and build this, make sure that it doesn't blow anything up. Always test your code, folks. All right. Execute. So it looks like we are good to go. So that's another one. A lot of these are pretty straightforward to knock out tonight, which is actually kind of surprising. All right, that one's closed. Let's see. Enhancement windows. Use system calls on memory allocation instead of allocation freeing instead of libc. Yes, that's actually a really good point. That might be a little optimization, but you can use heap alloc or heap free instead of malloc and free. Yes, that's true. Platform Win32. Platform allocate. Yep, we are just using malloc. Yeah, so we should probably do this on all platforms, right? I don't remember why we didn't do this initially. I don't really think I had a reason. The only thing I can't remember, I thought it was virtual alloc that I wanted to use instead of heap alloc. I don't remember what the difference is, though. Let's see if Stack Overflow gives us something. Can only allocate memory in. Right, so we want to use this when we allocate one of our arenas. So I guess we could stick with this, and then maybe we ought to provide a separate entry point for that. I mean, yeah. Okay, so this is saying here malloc calls heap alloc. I wonder if that's actually true. So let's see. Heap alloc. We can pass it a heap, flags, and then bytes. So heap. A handle to the heap from which the memory will be allocated. This handle is returned by heap create or get process heap function. Flags specifying these will override the rules. Heap. when the heap value was created. Okay, so generate exceptions. Ensure exceptions are generated. I wonder if I don't think I need to do that. No serialize. So which one of those do I want to use is the real question. Number of bytes allocated, the heap specified by each non-growable heap. Then it must be less than whatever that is. The non. Okay, so let's take a look at heap create. Is there a space in the virtual address space? So this is really like almost kind of creating a arena like within. Really, so when we create an arena, we probably should use this and then heap alloc from that. No, we wouldn't want to do that because that would make our own allocator kind of pointless, wouldn't it? Is there anything in here? AW example. Is there anything in here where it says, can I just pass 0, I wonder? Reserve the virtual memory. I could swear in the past I used virtual alloc for this instead. The problem with this is actually what all is calling this? That's really the question. Allocate aligned calls it. If the system is not set up yet. Right, and we are actually using this. So if we don't do this right, that could actually mess things up. So Windows, Linux, and Mac all do that. But I think the only thing, I think otherwise it uses platform allocate aligned, I want to say. So allocate. It's been so long since I've written this code, I don't remember everything that calls it. Memory system initialize. Okay, so this is what creates the massive arena that we wind up using for everything else. And we're saying aligned is false there, which actually that probably should be. That probably should be true. We want that to be aligned. I guess I could use get process heap, right? I think maybe that's what I'll do for right now. Okay, so let's try. Not heap create, heap alloc. Let's try this. What are the flags? I think I'm just going to pass. Ooh. Want that. Okay. So in here, we will say heap alloc. We'll get process heap. We will do for flags, we'll say heap 0 memory and size. I don't think we can actually do, can we do alignment with this? I don't think so. Is there an align function? No. I suppose that's fine though. I would imagine this will be aligned by default anyways. We could probably do away with this actually. So this is going to return a long pointer to a void, so we can actually just return that and treat it as a void pointer. Void pointer. And then here, for free, we can say heap free. We need to get process heap and what flags are available for heap free. Heap no serialize. I don't think we need any flags for that. Pointer is returned by the heap alloc. Okay, so this works basically the same way as malloc. So for flags, I'm going to pass 0 this time, and for LP memory, block. And that should do it. Let's see. Let's run. Yeah, looks like we're good. Everything still loads fine. All right, let's actually, since we're messing with memory stuff, let me split this and build our testbed lib. Oh, looks like we missed some warnings here. Oh wait, no. K-free align called. Okay, looks like we did miss some warnings here as well. Let's do this again. Check where in here. Keymap clear. Ah, okay. Didn't we? Yeah, we changed that to keymap. This should be keymap. That's probably going to be all of it if I had to guess. So let's exit out of here. Run the engine again. Okay, yeah. So these other warnings make sense for right now. Okay, so all that works, which is neat. Let's see. So I guess I can consider that fixed now. So this is 110. Yep, that all makes sense. Okay. Resolves that. Also removed some more console warnings. Push. Okay. So that one is now closed. All right. Windows console attribute not reset after printing. Oh yeah, I've seen this a bunch of times. PR 109 created to address this issue. Address 108 saves the state of the console before changing the console attribute. Let's have a look at what was done. So yeah, this is very much a Windows issue. Console screen buffer, CSBI, okay. Get console screen buffer info. And then it looks like we do all this. We write the console using this text attribute here. Set console text attribute, console handle, W attributes. Oh, okay. So it basically gets the state before we do it, does the thing, and then resets the state for both of these. That actually looks pretty simple. Okay. I really wish I could do this without cloning the entire thing. You know what, this is small enough I could just kind of put it in manually just to see if it works. So this is going to be in console write. So this is done first. He has console handle here. Oh, that's this guy. So we put that there. And I think this is the same code for both. It is. Right, so we get that, and then we reset at the end. And what I'll do is if this works, I will just merge his. Right. I think the problem is I think I removed all my test code. When was this actually put in? Well, I guess it doesn't matter when it's put in because it depends on where he is in the series. All right, so let's do entry. Create application. Let's do it here. Actually, I think we can just do it like right at the very beginning here. Let's just do it here. So K fatal test. Build. Right, so if we do that, yeah, it resets it. Because before it was like going out onto additional lines and stuff. Actually, I think I get a screenshot here of that. Yeah, so this is kind of what it was doing before. And it looks like it has fixed that. So I am satisfied with that. I am going to go ahead and instead of getting the info every time a message should be written to the console, I'd store it inside the platform state and get it once during the platform startup. That is an optimization. That's also a really good point. Dang it. This person brings up a really good point, though. Which sucks, because I actually wanted to use this guy's pull request. It's also conflicts. Okay. I'm just going to have to cancel this one. Yeah, because it's not going to be usable anyways. So, unfortunately, because there's conflicts, and I do not want to resolve conflicts. So, let's do when we set this up. Before we do any of this, right? Let's take it like first thing. Like right after we take the H instance. Let's do it there. The console handle is this. Which actually, that means we're going to have to save 2 of these. Which I think is fine. So let's go to platform states. std output CSBI, and then we need another one for error output CSBI. So we have a state pointer here already, so yeah, we can do it right here. So we'll get rid of this and say state pointer std output, and then we'll do a second one for error. Right? And this should be error output handle. What was that? What was it down here? std error handle. Okay, so we have those 2 different handles. We have the screen buffer info. So now we should actually just be able to back that change out and change this to state pointer. This is the standard one. And this is the error one. And that should actually give us the same thing. Wonder if that's going to work though. Yeah, because that hasn't been set at that point. So state pointer is null. Okay, so I am actually going to have to, unfortunately, keep that code. It's kind of crappy too. Because then I'm going to have to check every single time. Oh, that's really annoying. Wonder if I just should do it every time, because the problem is if we do this early, then we're not going to have that handle yet. So CSBI. If state pointer CSBI equals the address of this. Oops. Else we'll do this. Oh, that seems really crappy. This is literally just a struct, right? You know what? Let's not even do a pointer. Let's just take a copy of it. Heck with it. I'm not really that worried about it. Right, so either way we set CSBI, and then we can do that. Oh, that feels poopy. Feels poopy indeed. This is going to be the error. This goes away, and then this just becomes CSBI. All right. So it looks like that might have worked. Nope, maybe not. But that might have been from the previous failure. So let's run this one more time. Because it failed last time to actually do the thing. So yeah, it looks like it reset after that. So I think that's a good fix. Okay. So this is address 108. Okay. Git status. Oh, right. This entry.c needs to go away. Okay, so we get add commits resolves 108. All right, so that's been pushed. That's closed. Tweak the code some from what was in the provided PR. So used that instead. Thank you for submitting this. I'll leave a similar comment in the PR. Let's see, so I will say thank you for submitting this, wound up having to tweak the code somewhat based on comment. Okay, so I will close that. All right, so let's see. With that, let's go back to issues. So it looks like we still have a number of issues here, but we've also closed a number of issues. So I think I'm good with that progress for tonight. So I know we kind of were sort of a little bit all over the place tonight, but I think sometimes you just have to stop and sort of do some cleanup and trying to solve some bugs and whatnot. So with all that said, I think this is probably where I'm going to wrap up the stream for tonight. So I want to thank you guys very much for joining in and following along, and of course for the support. I appreciate that very much. And yeah, let me see if there is a channel I can raid real quick. I'm going to raid Team Vosh. So that is a team of 2 people that are making a MMO on their own. And I think that's kind of an interesting project. I know right now they're sort of doing like a lot of research on the networking portion of it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and raid their channel. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. So thanks so much for joining. And yeah, here goes the raid. And yep, I'll see you guys later.
Raid, how was your stream? Welcome, raiders.